Hi Todd, this is Nina Davey with a description for you of Doctor Who. You might say that I'm possibly something of an expert on the subject. For better or for worse, I have known and enjoyed Doctor Who for, not the guy. I've known and enjoyed this series as entertainment on TV since the late 80s. No, actually the early 80s when I was in college in Boulder and had my best friend, who's still my best friend, and I watched it Sunday afternoons with Captain Crunch and a big fat cat purring on our laps. Anyway, so I, in the late 80s, got a job working for two crazy party dudes who ran the Doctor Who Fan Club of America. And me and we'll call them Ricky and Chaz and another girl named Tracy, but we won't say her last name, so I won't. Little rocker gal, crazy gal. We would fulfill PBS, or the show showed on PBS, so we sold a lot of PBS merchandise. We helped with a lot of PBS pledge drives, and we did some crazy ass conventions with some. You know, these British actor people are sort of fun and approachable, and after Ron decided he wanted to sell the fan club, I actually took it over for a few years, but the show went on hiatus. I wasn't the best businesswoman. I really didn't like doing business out of my house, so I am no longer doing Doctor Who Fan Club of America, but so Doctor Who is the longest running science fiction TV show in the world. It started in 1963, unfortunately on the day that Kennedy was assassinated. Because it was the first episode of a new series for the BBC, they actually did something that was unprecedented at the time. They reran that episode. They did a repeat. They never did repeats. They showed these shows live, I believe. Or anyway, they showed them once. And what is interesting is that this show has gathered a huge and very loyal fan base, obviously, over the 40 years or 40 or more years that have transpired since it first was broadcast. But there were cans and cans and cans and cans and hundreds of episodes of this built up through the 60s, and many of which with great titles like, you know, Genghis, what was it, Marco Polo. Was it Marco Polo or Genghis Khan? Anyway, there was one about Genghis Khan. There was one about the Celestial Toy Maker. All sorts of fabulous things that they actually recorded over, and they're gone forever. But luckily enough, a lot of them still remain, even of the earliest shows. So, first episode of Doctor Who, 1963, the one that was repeated. Crazy, strange, weird chick who is in school, her name is Susan, is kind of got her teachers concerned. She's extremely bright, but also extremely dumb. It depends on the subject. Teachers can't figure her out. They decide to follow her home and talk to her grandfather, who she says is her guardian, the person that she lives with and takes care of her, and see what's up. So two teachers, nosy busybody teachers, follow her to a junkyard, and she gets in the junkyard. There's a police call box. These are things that were around in Britain in the 50s, the 60s, maybe even the 40s and the 30s, before cell phones were around. I think even before a lot of payphones. This thing looked like a big blue phone booth made out of wood. It had a notice on the front about what it was, and it had a phone in a little kind of drawer in the front door of the police call box. And you could pick up that phone and you had a direct line to the police station in the area where you were. So if you were having trouble on the streets, you could run to this thing and you could pick up the phone and get help, apparently. So, yeah, Susan goes into the junkyard, enters the police call box. The teachers are kind of weirded out. They go into the police call box, they get even more weirded out because it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and rather futuristical looking. And there's this old dude, Susan's grandfather, who calls himself the Doctor. The Doctor. Not Doctor Who, that's not his name. Doctor Who is not his name, he is the Doctor. Doctor Who is sort of a running joke for the last 40 years. That is the title of the show, obviously. So over the last 40 years, the Doctor has been played by 10 different people. And the reason for that is eventually, as you watch the series, and I don't think it was really revealed until the second or the third season, the Doctor is an alien. And he's part of apparently now, the most ancient race in the universe. And also pretty talented bunch of people. They apparently are kind of wired into the universe in that they understand how time works. They have all these senses that are tuned into time. And they got some pretty major technology that can manipulate, travel through time, do all sorts of stuff. But you know, they're sort of boring because knowing all this stuff, all they want to do is sit and observe, drink tea or whatever Time Lords drink, you know, since they sort of seem to have an affinity for Britain, I bet it's tea. And they hang out, and their rules are that you just sit and observe. You know, I suppose if we talk to any number of sci-fi authors, they say that's the best idea for a time traveler because you don't know how much you could really screw up if you start messing with stuff. However, the Doctor didn't like that. The Doctor is like the original beatnik. He's like, dude, there's suffering. People are having trouble. You know, there's like revolutions that people need to have. They need to overthrow the evil empire overlords or whatever. Anyway, the Doctor is, you know, he kind of runs away from Gallifrey and his responsibilities there to just sit around and drink tea and observe stuff, and he gets involved. And he also gets involved with a bunch of companions, people he travels around with in his, oh, did I say that the police call box was a spaceship and could travel through time? And the reason it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside is something to do with dimensions, and you know, only a Time Lord could really explain that to you. The other thing is, yeah, why the 10 different actors? How do they get away with the explanation? I mean, I guess you don't really need an explanation for different actors playing the same guy. I mean, you know, James Bond gets away with it. Maybe this guy's a really good plastic surgeon. But in this case, the Doctor does one better than plastic surgery. He can regenerate. And that's just because, you know, he is an alien. It's just an inherent ability of his species. Maybe it has something to do with him being all tiny involved. Anyway, so many actors, all with different takes, which is part of the fun of the series. Really, I'd say, you know, the main reason this series enthralls is that it's more about people. And, you know, the Doctor's kind of your almost essential 60s, 70s sort of socially interested guy who wants to make things better for everybody. You know, he's the Doctor. He wants to make things better for everybody. And he's sort of a peacenik. He doesn't like violence, though of course, you know, running around and getting involved in all this stuff, he sometimes has to resort to it. But he's really, you know, against killing, and he's really kind of for the little guy or the weird-looking guy or the alien. Sometimes gets more play than the human person, and lots of fun, and a character that really grows on you over 40 years. Anyway, the show went on hiatus in 1990, or was it 89? Hiatus, yes. It went on hiatus for 15 years.